Hello everyone, and welcome to our second video, Ways to Colorize Black and White Photos. This time we are working from our second album, Lips and Teeth. And you can find this image in our album from our Facebook group and download and join along with us. Today we're going to look at some new techniques, selections, and hue, saturation and lightness adjustment layers for our colorization. So let's get started from here. And let's have a look. Before we begin, I do want to check my selection feather, which is the softness around the edge. So if we come up here, we can just choose our regular one. You can actually see I've got no feather on at the moment. I think I prefer, how big is this? Maybe 2 pixels for this particular image, and I'd set that and check on that first. Now the tool in Photoshop that I find helpful is the quick selection tool. So if you click where there's the arrow here, the fly out menu, and yours might look slightly different to mine, but I'm going to change it to the quick selection tool. So while we've got our background selected, we drag our quick selection tool over the area that we want to select. And that's done a pretty good job. I'm going to, there we go. Remove the teeth in this particular instant, and we could come up here and change to the minus sign, which would remove the area that we're working on. Oops, there we go. To the next break. However, generally for speed, I would keep mine on the plus adding sign, but use the Option key. And if you look carefully, you can see the plus in the middle of my cursor. When I hold down the Option key, changes to a minus. So that's actually the same as having the, you can see here, rather than clicking, I'm just using the keyboard on the Alt or Option key to deselect the area of the teeth. Okay, so we'll work out that bit later. Now this time it doesn't really matter what colour we're going to fill the lips. We're going to start with that. So I've got this apricot colour, that's fine to start with. I'm going to use the paint bucket, and I'm going to place that. First of all, make a new layer, a blank layer. Then we're going to have our lips coloured in one click. Change this to colour blend mode, and we can drop the saturation down just a little. Command D will deselect, and I'm going to just fix up the little bits there, but you can see how much time I've saved by using selections. And I think even if it doesn't select everything perfectly, you can always touch it up a little. And because it's on a separate layer, I'm just going to change to the paintbrush and fix this spot that I did miss. It might need some pink on it, that the inside of the cheek later. But for the moment we've got our lipstick on, and we could hope that we'd chosen the right colour that we wanted exactly. But what if we decide now we wanted to change the colour? We don't have to start all over again. If we come up to adjustment layers, we can go layer, new adjustment layer, hue saturation. You can see I don't use that one very often. I will normally just click there. And here we have a non-destructive adjustment layer. Now what we're going to do is clip it to the layer below, and you could imagine that's like a coat hanger, and you're putting a rubber band around the neck of two coat hangers so that they always have to stay together. So here I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key plus the Command key, and I'm not sure in Windows what that might be, and clip it to the lip layer. Okay, now layer, create clipping mask, and that one is clipped. So we've got our lip layer here, if I turn that on and off, and this is our new adjustment layer that's only going to affect the lips. Now from here we can actually make quite a big change to the colour at any stage. We can make small changes, decrease or increase saturation, and the lightness of the colour layer as well. So you can see the benefit of being able to make quick and easy changes. Okay. Now what I'd like to do is colour the teeth, and we'll go back to the quick select tool. Now you might be thinking that teeth can be left white. And when you're colorising black and white photos, anything that's in there as white is actually a shade of grey, and so we don't really want grey teeth. With your selection, if you're ever having trouble, if you change the size of your brush to a smaller brush, oops, take some more detail. So sometimes even just changing the brush size a small amount can make your making a selection easier. Now if you look in our guides for lips and teeth, in the comments below you'll see some posts for sample lip palettes and sample teeth palettes. So we could change to the eyedropper, and let's select ivory, go back, change to our paint bucket, and we need to create the new layer and drop that in. Don't worry, we can reduce that opacity. Now you can see the differentiation between the grey of the untouched skin. If you want to make it slightly brighter colour, you could always use perhaps soft light, and that might just need a small change. So if we take that off, you can see that's a grey colour. So for this one, I've actually used the eyedropper to identify the colour that we need. just double click the section to the layer, and that's easy to rename. So we've used selection for both of these layers and hue saturation adjustment or an eyedropper from a reference colour. So either way is fine. Now we have the skin to colour, and we could do the same process of selection, or in Photoshop we could use the option select tool, and now we've selected the whole area. But it's actually not the lips and the teeth that we want selected this time. We want the inverse, everything but that section. So if we go select inverse, it might look very similar, but you can see the selection marching ants are now at the outside. And if we get our paint bucket, we've got our blank layer for skin selected, we can colour the skin. So if I deselect the mouth, it's a little bit green because that was the same colour that we used for the teeth, but that doesn't matter at this stage because let's pop a hue saturation layer above. Now do you remember to clip it like the coat hanger to the skin layer, and we can make it more natural. So you see it doesn't take a lot. Alright, and to finish off I might just do a small amount in the gum line here. So I'm on a new layer. Going to clip that. Here's another way that instead of holding down the Command and Option key and clicking here between the two, you can just click there and that clips. So you could either go layer, create clipping mask, or the square arrow down is like the coat hanger. Now here we don't want it to be the orangey colour, so we'll go maybe towards some pink. Where are we? And of course it would help if I pop that onto colour blend mode before I started. I can drop that down. So it's meant to be subtle, but let's bring it up. You can always come back and change your individual layers using this hue saturation adjustment at any stage. Paint or remove as you wish, and just round out the edges there a little bit. Now this delineation here is a little bit harsh, even if we zoom back out. So for the lips layer, sometimes I will just soften using the blur tool and take it right down in strength. And you can see this is quite harsh, and in real life there would be a softer transition. So maybe we could go up to about 12. It's just causing a very slight bleed of the colours on the edges because we're introducing colour. Even though we've feathered the edge of our selection, in fact, you could also use, once I'm here, if I'd use the keyboard number 2, it changes the strength up to 20%. And you're better to go very slowly. Just to soften the transition. In fact, it can even come up a little bit. That's it there. So it's still clear, but there are much fewer hard transitions. There we go. Now, overall, perhaps the teeth could come down a little in colour. Remember, that was the eyedropper colour that we chose from our reference points. That's what we had wrong. I turned off the hue saturation, so that was our original apricot colour that we chose to paint with. But that's the colour adjustment layer above. And the same goes for the skin, which is clipped. So if you have trouble and get confused, always have a look that the Hue-Saturation-Lightness layer is above and has the little detour sign onto the layer below. And there we have completed lesson 2, and we've introduced selections and paint bucket. You can use the shortcut G. If I hold that down, you can see the option will come out for you to see the letter G if you hold that down. So if I go back to my paint brush, if I now click G, you can see it's changing. The second new technique was the Hue-Saturation-Lightness and the clipping mask, which is a bit like the coat hangers being tied together. Thanks for listening. That's lesson number 2.